Hello, eighth grade. It's eighth grade science, and this is 387 to 393. Really, your last YouTube, unless I do something along the lines of like a review, because we are nearing the end of our science book. Yay! So we've worked hard this year, and a lot of times just kept on working. So that's why we're so ahead. But talking a little bit about renewable energy. And renewable energy is basically like renewable resources is it can be renewed or it can be remade or you don't just lose it. Whenever you put coal in and you in the fire or whatever, it's gone once you've burned it up. So it's not renewable. It's extremely slowly renewable as far as coal in and of itself. It takes hundreds and thousands of years for coal to form. So it just depends on um, what you want to call renewable. It will form again, but not necessarily um, like that. So there's different types of renewable energy. Sunlight, we call solar power, wind power, um, hydroelectric power, which would be water, and of course, all of those being very easily renewable, and nuclear power, which we'll talk about as well. So, energy obtained from plant and animal matter, that would be biomass energy, wood, um, fossil fuels. You could kind of put that in that category as well. But wood is renewable, but it can be takes a lot of years you can replant a tree, but it might take 30, 40, 50 years for it to grow back to what it once was that you can harvest it again. So it's not as easily or quickly renewable as some of these others that we'll talk about, but it's and sometimes people complain about it producing gas and or not gas, smoke and pollution in that realm. So that's just I just give you the facts. We actually burn wood here, but as far as like a massive production, like a factory or what we would produce our electricity with, then that would be something different. That would cause a lot of pollution if you're burning that much wood, and that would take a lot of wood. Um, so one of the best known, remember bio um, means life or something from living, that kind of thing. So, biofuels as well. One of the best known biofuels is ethanol. And ethanol is an alcohol derived from corn, grains, agricultural products of some sort, agricultural waste. And ethanol can be used in ordinary gasoline. You'll see that in some things there. Um, and they're working on, just being able to have a few little design changes and us be able to use that even in our vehicles and that kind of stuff instead of using petroleum. So, we'll see. Then you've got biogas. This is a biofuel that is primarily made of methane, and it's natural gas derived from biomass, basically like kitchen waste, agricultural waste, manure, sewage, all of that. Like they're saying, you could take it and use all of that as fuel. So they're working on those types of things to make that more easily attainable for us and to where we would not have to rely on the Middle East as well as much for oil. So that's what they're working on. Whether or not that will come to be, we will see. Um, then you've got different types of sun power, solar energy. So, solar energy has to do with energy that we obtain from the sun, and something converts it into electricity. Well, we understand, you can have even a little calculator, and it can be powered by light or by the sun's energy. And those have little what we call photovoltaic cells in it. And it's where it converts light into energy or light into electricity. And You've got one drawback from solar energy is that that source is not constant. Just like today, if I look outside, the sunlight's out there, obviously, but it's not like extremely powerful for us to be able to use solar power panels, that kind of thing. If it's something that just converts light into energy, that would work. But if it has to have that direct sunlight, then that's not a constant source for us, because we have cloud cover and that kind of thing. You have active and passive solar energy. Active solar energy collects the energy from the sun, it converts it directly into electricity. Passive solar energy uses the solar energy that just naturally falls on the building to heat it. So let's say you built a building with lots and lots and lots of windows, that would allow that sun to kind of heat up almost like the greenhouse effect. So that would allow the sun to heat that up and to keep it nice and warm, in that area. Some of us, we realize there are certain areas that you go, like in a building or a house or apartments or whatever, and that area is always really warm if the sun's shining in there. And that's kind of what they're talking about there, just passive solar energy. But active solar energy is actually converting that electricity into, or converting that sunshine into electricity by means of a photovoltaic cell. Take photovoltaic cells, which you can see at the bottom of 389. You put a lot of those in a big panel, and that's how you get a solar panel. So there's, in this particular picture, there's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of photovoltaic cells, one little cell in each of those little compartments. And they put all those together to make a solar panel. Um, Solar panels, they can attach them to special devices that kind of moves with the sun. That's kind of cool. We saw that when we went to Vermont. They had so much more solar power up there than what we have here. You see solar farms all over the place, or wind turbines all over the place up there. But anyway, so they're maple syrup houses. Some of them get their energy from either a wind turbine or solar panels, or maybe both. So anyway, some of them bend and flex in order to go with the sun. So if the sun is rising over here, then they'll start off the day like this. And then as the sun goes over midday, it's gonna be straight up to be able to collect as much sun as it possibly can. And so then if it's going down in the west, it's going down, then it's going to flex and bend towards the sun. So basically they follow the sun. And that's really cool. And that's probably most beneficial, if you're going to have something along those lines to help your business. And places up there, they'll gain so much energy and electricity that they don't use. They actually sell the electricity that they make extra back to the electric companies up there. So that's kind of a means of a little bit of income for them as well. And then some of them, some people just have basically a solar panel on the top of their house, or maybe on one side of their house, usually the back side where people wouldn't see them all. And they'll use that to power their homes, or to help power their homes at times. They're kind of expensive. And so that would be one of the major drawbacks, would be that they're pretty expensive. But the major drawback is that the sun's not always constant. Obviously, it's going to be more beneficial in California and Florida than it's going to be in certain areas that don't have as much, sunshine all the time. All right, so page 390. Wind power. Wind power uses what we call windmills a lot of times. It's technically a wind turbine, and it's basically a device that generates electricity by the motion that the wind is causing the actual turbine to make. So the greatest drawback from that, obviously, it's going to be expensive to build, but then it's also, the biggest thing would be that the wind is not a constant source. Now, right here where I live, I feel like I could put a wind turbine in my yard and it would be a constant source, because we live kind of at the top of a mountain, and the wind just kind of comes up and right, it was just windy up here all the time. So a lot of times you will see the wind turbines at the top of a mountain, or out Midwest, they have like what they call wind farms, and you can see actually a picture of one of those on 390, and that's where the wind is going to kind of come across more, that Tornado Alley area there. They really don't want tornadoes though, because that could rip up the turbines to a certain extent. All right, so you can see the solar panels, the solar farm, and the wind farm there on page 390. Then you have hydroelectric power, hydro meaning water, and that's where they use water and the water flowing over something to transform that into electricity, that motion, to transfer it into electricity. And it is the most widely used form of renewable energy, is the hydroelectric power there. Make sure you read all these, because they're actually something that, it's developing, continually developing, and you really do need to know about the different forms of power and how they produce them. What's the drawbacks? What's the benefits and all of that. So make sure you really read that, and that will help you for testing and quizzing as well. All right, and then I have nuclear power, which a lot of times people are like, nuclear power. But nuclear power is actually a little bit more promising than some of these others, because you can continually produce this power, and it sounds scary, but as long as they're doing it properly and they take the proper precautions, it's not as scary as what it sounds. They use what they call nuclear fission, which, remember, fission means division, and so they use basically they split an atom's nucleus, and that releases a large amount of energy, causes a chain reaction, and as it releases that energy, it's converted into electricity in the plant. And I know that there's a nuclear power plant over in Virginia that we went to a lake one time, and my nephew lived there. And one side of the power plant was kind of cool water, and they used that water. It was a man-made lake, and they used that water to be able to cool the engines continually. They had to keep it cool, because if you can imagine, if they're releasing that much nuclear power and nuclear energy, then they're definitely producing a ton of heat. And so they have to keep all that cool, or else then that could cause major problems. And so they keep that cool, and then the rest of that water that has gone over the engines goes actually into the other part of the lake, the second part of the lake, man-made lake, and it's always warm. Like, even when it's cold outside, the lake is warm because it's continually flowing like that. So I think that's pretty neat to see how they do that. And then all these houses are built around the lake, and it stays warm a lot of more than what, like, we would have in that area. So they have a nuclear reactor there. That's a device that safely starts and it controls the chain reactions there. So that's really important, that they have something that safely does it. You definitely read the analysis of nuclear power. What happened in Chernobyl, you'll need to know that even for history's sake. 392 and 393, read about that, and you can see why nuclear power would be some of the most beneficial. It's going to be expensive to build a nuclear power plant at first, but then the benefits kind of outweigh the cons of it all. And then, of course, they have to be able to take the radioactive waste and put them somewhere. So you can read about that as well. All right, so that brings us to the end of chapter 12 and the end of 8th grade science book. So for the rest of the year, basically what we'll do is a lot of review and get some of those types of things, and depends on what we do, if we go back to school or if we don't, or whatever. We just wait and we'll see. But for now, get those assignments in on time, people. 8th grade, or some of you all are really struggling getting things to me on time, and I encourage you just get up and get it done and send it right to me, and that will help us all. Have a great day.